Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the other day, the NFL released their schedules. They released the 18 games in the 18 weeks of the NFL season, week by week, matchup by matchup. And today, I wanted to go over the newest schedule for the 2023 Detroit Lions, all of their games, all of their primetime games, and take a look at what the record prediction is at this point before training camp and all the stuff like that kicks off. However, before we get into that, and before we get into predicting the record, I want to go back a little bit. I want to start off with where the Lions were at the end of the 2022 season, what they accomplished in 2022, what they added in the 2022 offseason, and then go over the schedule and talk about where they should be in 2023. So, with that being said, let's start off with the 2022 season. Now, offensively, the Lions were incredible last season as they ranked as the 6th best passing offense in the NFL behind Jared Goff and that top offensive line. They ranked 5th in scoring offense, again, with Jared Goff having a really good season and Jamal Williams leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns. They had the fewest turnovers in the NFL, especially in the latter half of the season when they went 8-2. They had very few turnovers and ended the season as the least turnover-prone team in the NFL, as well as finishing with a respectable 11th in the rushing offense. Now, the Detroit Lions are returning offensive coordinator Ben Johnson after a lot of doubt that he would return. There was a lot of talk that he was going to leave for a head coaching position after the work he did with the Detroit Lions, but he ended up returning for 2022, as well as returning their top quarterback in the division, the top offensive line in the division, as well as, I would argue, the top 2 wide receiver in the division with that man right there, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, even though the Lions were a phenomenal offense last year, their defense can't quite say the same. Their defense ranked 30th against the pass, 29th against the rush, as well as 29th as the scoring defense in the NFL. They were not very good, and in fact, they were one of the worst defenses in the NFL, but weren't the worst defense in the division as the Bears ranked 32nd. However, the Lions did face a lot of injury concerns early in the season, and in the last 10 games where they went 8-2, they only allowed 20.2 points per game, which would have ranked them top 10 in the NFL at the 7th best defense in the NFL as far as points allowed. They had a massive, historic turnaround from the first 7 weeks to the last 10 weeks, and it showed. The health got better, the play got better, the play calling got better, Aaron Glenn got better, the defensive pass rush was significantly improved. In the last 10 weeks of the NFL season, they were not only a above average defense, they were a top 10 defense, right? They didn't just get better by improving off of what they were bad at. They didn't just get better and improve from 29 to the mid 20s and, going from historically bad to below average. They went from historically bad to a top 10 defense in the NFL over the latter half of the season, which is why they finished 8-2. Now, they're returning their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, who took some massive strides in 2022, as well as a young pass rush that by the end of the season was playing pretty well. Now, they're also returning a couple good key secondary members, guys like Kirby Joseph and returning Tracy Walker, but there was a lot of change in the secondary as well. Looking at the additions of the 2023 offseason, the Lions added a lot to both the offense and the defense that sorely needed it. They started off their offseason by acquiring both Cam Sutton and Emmanuel Mosley, a cornerback duo, one from Pittsburgh and one from San Francisco, respectively, to likely be the starting cornerback duo in Detroit. Both of them allowed a really low completion percentage a year ago, did not allow very many catches when they were targeted, and honestly weren't targeted very much. Their combined statistics I'll put on the screen right now, they were incredible over the last 16 games each. And if they can both stay healthy, the Lions should have a really good new revamped secondary on their hands. Now, they also went out and acquired C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the offseason to play a safety/nickel role. He led the NFL in interceptions a season ago. I would argue is a top 5 to top 10 safety in the NFL right now. And the Lions got him for a 1-year, $8 million contract. Now, they continued on the defense as they added Jalen Reeves-Maybin to be a special teams ace as well as a potential coverage linebacker in a pass-heavy offense. And then they went into the draft and got the best linebacker in Jack Campbell, a player that is going to affect the run as well as the passing defense. And then they went out in the second round and they acquired the best safety in the draft, being Brian Branch, the safety from Alabama, who will play a similar role to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, will be kind of a safety cornerback hybrid, can play a lot of different positions in the secondary. And with the 45th overall pick, with a player that was projected to go top 20, the Lions ended up getting a large steal in Brian Branch with the 45th overall pick. Now, despite having a top 5 offense, the Detroit Lions addressed the offense pretty heavily as well, as they signed David Montgomery to a 3-year, $18 million contract to replace Jamal Williams in his running back production. They brought in Graham Glasgow to improve the offensive line from both a talent and a depth perspective, and there will be a camp battle between him and Halapoulivaati Vaitai for the starting right guard spot there. And then they brought in Marvin Jones late in the free agency process to kind of fill out the wide receiving core and address a need that was sorely lacking from the loss of DJ Chark. Now, they went out in the draft and they spent their first overall pick on Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back from Alabama, who they will likely use as a slot receiver / a Deebo Samuel-esque role. And then with their third pick in the draft, their first pick in the second round, they went out and acquired Sam Laporta, arguably the best receiving tight end in this draft class, to go be a safety blanket for Jared Goff after trading away TJ Hockenson earlier in the 2022 season. Now, that all brings us to the NFL schedule. The Lions this season are projected to be pretty good, right? Their offense was top 5 and got better with Montgomery and Glasgow and Jones and Laporta and Gibbs. Their defense was really good down the stretch, and they added Sutton and Mosley and Johnson and Maybin and Campbell and Branch. They added a lot of playmakers. They added a ton of talent throughout the draft. And now it's time to talk about the 2023 season for the Detroit Lions. Now, this is the official schedule. They open up in prime time in a Thursday night matchup to open the season against the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Now, there's a lot of people that have chalked this up to an immediate loss. There's a lot of people that have this being no shot the Detroit Lions end up winning this game. And although I think this will be a close game, although I think this is a game the Lions certainly can win with their incredible offense and improved defense, right? Beating the Kansas City Chiefs early before they get chemistry with their new weapons, before their defense gets it all together, before, they kind of hit that Chiefs mode in November and December where they're almost unbeatable. I think getting the Chiefs early is better than getting the Chiefs late. And I think this is a winnable game for the Detroit Lions. However, I do think the Lions are going to drop this game. It's really hard to win at Arrowhead. It's really hard to beat the Chiefs. And the Lions are going to have a lot of defensive members that haven't built up a ton of chemistry yet. So I think that dropping an early game to Kansas City is going to hurt, but going 0-1 early is going to hurt. But it's not going to ruin the Detroit Lions season, right? The Kansas City Chiefs are the reigning Super Bowl champions for a reason. Taking them on in week 1 and giving them a show is going to be something that I think the Lions are going to do. And I think I'll give them a 40% chance of walking out with a victory. They have the opportunity. They have the tools. I just think that Kansas City is probably a step ahead of the Detroit Lions, even going into week 1. Now, the Lions return home for their home opener versus the Seattle Seahawks. Last year, this was one of the most entertaining games of the season, one of the highest scoring games, if not the highest scoring game of the 2022 season. The Lions got better on offense. They got better on defense. The Seahawks also got much better this offseason, but finished really, really struggling down the stretch. I think Geno Smith got figured out a little bit. I think people finally got some tape on the Seahawks offense and some tape on the Seahawks defense. And I think that the Seahawks are going to probably stay right where they are. And I think the Lions are going to have a revenge game. I don't think the Seahawks are going to put up 40-plus points on us again. I think that we should be able to put up points on the Seahawks like we did last year. It won't be as high scoring of a game, but I think the Lions at home in the home opener are going to get back to 500 versus the Seahawks. I think this will be a really close game, really fun matchup. but I think the Lions are going to take it in a revenge game. Same thing goes with their second home game. I think the Atlanta Falcons are a better team than a lot of people give them credit for. I think they're a team that can realistically go out and win the NFC South. However, I don't think their offensive line is incredible. I think that Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan Robinson are phenomenal weapons, but I think Desmond Ridder is not the greatest quarterback. He's a quarterback that still has a lot to prove. I think that defense still has a lot to prove, especially in the secondary. And I think the Lions are going to walk out with a more comfortable victory than they were against Seattle and Kansas City, but not necessarily an easy victory, right? I think the Lions win this game by a score, maybe 10 points, but it's a good victory for the Detroit Lions. Then they go to Green Bay in Lambeau on Monday Night Football, and they went in on Monday Night Football last year with nothing to play for, and they ended up beating Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers in the cold, in Lambeau, in December, in January even. And I think that this is going to repeat itself. I think the Lions, after last season, they went into Lambeau in a cold environment versus Aaron Rodgers with playoffs on the line, and they beat Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau, which is really, really hard to do, even in a down season for Aaron Rodgers. Now they get to play in the fall versus a quarterback that has, at this point in the season, is going to have 5 career starts, this one being the 5th. I think that they are going to end up beating Green Bay pretty handedly on Monday Night Football. Now, I do think they drop one to the Carolina Panthers, although I really want this to be a revenge game at home, right? The conditions are better, the field is better, the Lions are better, and I do think the Lions are a better football team than the Carolina Panthers, but I think the Carolina Panthers are still going to run the ball a lot. I think Bryce Young is a much better quarterback, and I think that just overall, I think they will be a strong defense. I think they'll be a strong defense. I think they'll be an okay offense. I think they'll run the ball really, really well. And I think this is going to be kind of that one fluke game at home where it's like, yeah, unfortunately, you're just going to drop one to a team with a strong offensive line, a good rookie quarterback that's going to make some plays, a decent receiving core with DJ Chark, Terrence Marshall, as well as Adam Thielen is a solid wide receiving group. And I think that they're going to drop one. I think the Lions are better than Carolina, and I think that they very well could take this game. But I think winning 4 games in a row is kind of a stretch for any NFL team. And I think that they're going to drop a strong one at home. I think they're going to bounce back in Tampa Bay, and they're going to take one versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think Tampa Bay is very good this year. The Lions should go down to a warm weather's team, and they should win the football game. Now, then they travel over to Baltimore. And I think Baltimore is a good football team. I think they're a playoff team, very similar, honestly, in positioning to the Detroit Lions as far as where I expect them to finish record-wise. I think they'll drop one in Baltimore. I think it'll be a cold game. I think Baltimore will run the ball a lot. And even though Detroit got a lot better in the run defense, I think Baltimore is one of the strongest rushing attacks in the NFL, assuming Lamar Jackson is healthy. I think the Ravens take this game. However, then they travel back to Detroit. They take on Vegas on Monday Night Football for their 3rd primetime game of the season. And I think that they're going to take this one. Jimmy G does not impress me. I don't trust the coaching of the Raiders right now. I think that Josh Jacobs is very good, but again, that's really the only weapon they have. It's him and Devontae Adams. I think that they can shut down those 2 players. They can score on the Raiders defense. And I think, again, I really don't trust the coaching of the Vegas Raiders. I think that they'll take that one as well. They then go to Los Angeles, and I think that they're going to upset the Los Angeles Chargers. It's in a dome. Again, the Chargers coaching staff has made some questionable decisions in the past. I don't necessarily trust them there, but I do think that they are going to beat the Chargers in Los Angeles. Then they come home versus the Chicago Bears. And for the 3rd week in a row, I think the Detroit Lions are going to win this football game. It's the Chicago Bears. They got better this offseason. I think they'll finish 2nd or 3rd in the NFC North with 7 to 8 wins. I think it'll be a close, tough game, but especially at Ford Field, I don't see Chicago taking it. You don't make up a 41-10 deficit in an offseason. I think they can get us I think they might get us at Soldier Field, but they're not going to get us at home. They're not going to get us at Ford Field. Same thing goes with Green Bay, right? Their best chance is going to be winning at Lambeau. If they can't win at Lambeau, they're not going to win at Ford Field, especially not with Jordan Love. Jordan Love's already 0-1 at Ford Field, and he is going to be 0-2 after this season. Now, the Saints one is a little bit questionable. The Saints have a really strong home field advantage, and I think the Lions could drop one of these games. And I think the Lions will drop a game either between week 13 and week 15. I think one of those 2 games is a trap game for the Lions. Either the Saints or the Broncos are going to steal a game the Lions should end up winning. And I think it's going to end up being the Saints. I think the Saints are a stronger team than people give them credit for. They have Derek Carr, who's a better quarterback than I think a lot of people want to admit. They still have Chris Olave. They might have Michael Thomas. They might have Alvin Kamara. They still have a decent offensive line, still have defensive playmakers. At home field, I think the Saints are going to take it and upset the Lions. And I think they go 0-2 in this stretch. I think they do lose to the Chicago Bears on the road. Soldier Field in December is going to be a hard game for them to win. It's going to be cold. The environment's going to suck. It's going to be, I think, a very similar game to the Carolina Panthers a season ago, where the elements are going to play a factor. The strong rushing attack of the Chicago Bears is going to play a factor. And unfortunately, I think the Lions dropped their first divisional game in this season, but I think they'll bounce back. I think they'll beat the Denver Broncos in Denver. Yes, it's at home. Yes, Denver got a new head coach. I think Denver's going to be stronger than last year, but I really think Russell Wilson is the problem. And I'm honestly concerned that I don't think Sean Payton even can fix Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos at this point. Then they go to Minnesota. I think in a dome, they should beat Minnesota, as well as in week 18, they should beat Minnesota. I think the Lions go 5-1 in the division, but I do think they drop one in between as a strong game against Dallas, rematch. But I think Dallas's defense is really, really good, and the Lions will drop another game being realistic, which puts the Lions at 11-6. It puts them as, in my opinion, the best team in the NFC North, a team that can go compete for the division, a team that can go compete for the 3rd seed in the NFC, and go host a playoff game in 2023. Now, I don't want to be overly unrealistic. I don't want to be like, oh, they're going 15-2, they're going 14-3, because they have a strong schedule, right? They have to play Kansas City. They have to play Seattle. They have to play, I think, a couple sneaky good teams in the NFC South. They have to play the division that had a 13-win Minnesota Vikings last year. They have to play the Chicago Bears twice, once at Soldier Field, and I think they got much, much better this year. But I do think the Lions are going to go 11-6. Without 2 pick sixes a season ago, realistically, the Lions could have went 11-6, right? They went 9-8. If they don't throw a pick six in a 1-score game versus Philadelphia, they might have won that game. If they don't throw a pick six versus the Seattle Seahawks, who were, again, another playoff team, they might have won that game. So that puts them right there at 11-6 with just 2 plays in 2022. And I think that they can reach 11-6. I think that potentially the Jameson Williams suspension could bite them a little bit and bring down their record from what could be a really, really good football team, like 13+ wins, I think is their ceiling. But I think the Jameson Williams suspension is going to hurt them early. I think that they're going to drop a couple of games that they shouldn't, just because realistically that's what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, I think 11-6 is a fair record. I got the Lions record right last season. I was almost 100% on their schedule, trying to be as realistic as possible. And I think that winning the NFC North with an 11-6 record, with the Bears slowly behind, as they and the Vikings, I think, are going to finish with 9 wins and 8 wins respectively. I think that the Vikings are going to win 9. I think the Bears are going to win 8. I think it'll be a close, tough division, but I think the Lions will kind of they will take the title, as they are the best team on paper. I think they have the best quarterback, the best O-line, the best coaching staff, and I think they made the most improvements on paper this season. It might take a little bit for them to gel, but I think that they're going to take a good amount of games this season and should finish as one of the top teams in the NFC. Now, with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below how you feel about the schedule, how you feel about the improvements this offseason. I'd be very curious to hear what you guys think. But with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you go down, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and help out the channel in any way that you can. It is greatly appreciated and helps the channel out a ton. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions!